All right, let's dive into the chaotic, high-stakes world of cryptocurrency. Today, we're looking at Washington's big plan to finally, maybe, tame the Wild West of finance.
For the longest time, the crypto space has felt just like that, the Wild West. It's this incredible frontier of opportunity and mind-blowing innovation, for sure. But it's also been packed with enormous risks, scams, and just a total lack of clear rules. So, that's the big question we're tackling. After years of kind of watching from the sidelines, it really seems like U.S. lawmakers are ready to step in and lay down the law. What's the plan? And, why now?
Okay, so to really get these new laws, we first have to understand the problem they're trying to solve. What created this sudden sense of urgency in Washington?
Well, the answer really comes down to one word: failure. The spectacular collapses of firms like FTX, those weren't just headlines. They were catastrophic events where real people lost billions and billions of dollars. It was a massive wake-up call that without some basic guardrails, the industry was a danger to itself and, more importantly, to investors.
On top of all that, you've had this paralyzing turf war going on. You've got the SEC, which handles stocks, and the CFTC, which handles commodities like gold. And for years, they've both been claiming they're in charge of crypto. The result? A confusing mess that has stifled innovation and left everyone asking, so who is actually the sheriff in this town? And that brings us to the first big piece of the solution, which zeroes in on the very foundation of the crypto economy: stablecoins.
So, what exactly is a stablecoin? Well, think of it as a digital dollar. Unlike something super volatile like Bitcoin, it's designed to hold a steady one-to-one value with the dollar, which makes it the absolute backbone for trading and payments in the crypto world.
So the Genius Act comes in and sets some really simple, powerful rules. First, it mandates that every single digital dollar has to be backed by one real dollar held in safe assets, like cash. Second, it demands transparency. We're talking monthly reports and audits. And crucially, it puts consumer protection first and helps fight money laundering. The bottom line, it's all about creating trust and stability where there wasn't any.
And what's really amazing here is that this isn't just some proposal. The Genius Act is already law. It passed with huge support from both Democrats and Republicans. And that's a big signal, right? It proves that Washington can actually come together and get things done on crypto.
Okay, so the Genius Act sorted out stablecoins. But what about that bigger, more complicated turf war between the SEC and the CFTC? Well, that's where the Clarity Act steps in. At its heart, the Clarity Act does something absolutely essential. It creates a whole new category called a digital commodity. This is the key because it finally distinguishes a decentralized asset like Bitcoin from a traditional stock, and it officially gives the CFTC the primary job of overseeing it.
So here's how it works. First, it defines what a digital commodity is, putting it squarely under the CFTC's watch. Second, it clarifies that things that are clearly investment contracts, those still belong to the SEC. And third, and this is a real game changer for innovation, it creates a clear path for a project to officially become decentralized and transition from being a security into a commodity.
Now, of course, a bill this big is going to have its critics. And one of the main arguments you hear is that this whole thing puts our banks, taxpayers, and the entire financial system at risk.
But the folks who support the bill, they flip that argument right on its head. They say the real risk is doing nothing at all. Failing to create clear rules just leaves the door wide open for another FTX-style disaster. They argue that having a clear framework is what actually protects investors and the whole system. Now, this legislative push doesn't stop with just regulating private crypto. The third major bill on the docket tackles a really controversial idea: a government-issued digital dollar. This is what's known as a central bank digital currency, or a CBDC. And let's be crystal clear, this is not Bitcoin. A CBDC would be a digital dollar issued and controlled directly by the U.S. central bank, the Federal Reserve. And wow, has this sparked a fierce debate. On one side, you have proponents who argue a CBDC could modernize our payment system and help people who don't have bank accounts. But on the other side, you have critics who warn it could become an Orwellian surveillance tool, giving the government a direct window into every single purchase you ever make. So, the Anti-CBDC Act basically says, whoa, not so fast. It draws a very firm line in the sand.
It would prohibit the Fed from issuing a digital dollar directly to you and me, stopping it from becoming a kind of retail bank that holds all our personal financial data. And most importantly, it makes sure that a decision this huge must be approved by Congress, not just created by a government agency on its own.
So, with these 3 huge bills in play, where does that leave us? It really feels like we've reached a major turning point. The end of ambiguity might just be in sight.
Back in the summer of 2025, the U.S. House held what they literally called Crypto Week. I mean, this was a historic moment. Lawmakers finally stopped just talking and started voting, passing these landmark bills. It was a massive signal that the U.S. is moving from just watching crypto to actively regulating it.
And just look at the vote count for the Clarity Act, the big one that sorts out the SEC-CFTC turf war. It passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. That tells you there's a real, broad consensus on the need for a clear framework.
But then you look at the Anti-CBDC Act, and it tells a totally different story. It passed by a razor-thin margin, almost completely down party lines. This shows that while everyone seems to agree on regulating private crypto, the debate over a government digital dollar, well, that's way more ideological and divisive.
So, what's the ultimate takeaway from all of this? What does it all mean for you? It's pretty simple, actually. The Wild West days are over. Regardless of what happens next in the Senate, the era where crypto just existed in this legal gray area, that's definitively coming to an end.
So, the House of Representatives has drawn its map for this new frontier. They've laid out a vision with rules, with boundaries, with consumer protections. But here's the thing, that's only half the battle. Now all eyes turn to the Senate. And the big multi-trillion-dollar question we're all left with is, will the Senate agree to this map? The answer to that is going to define the future of digital assets in America for a long time.